Okay, thank you very much for joining us. Before we go to Frenemies, can you tell us, just very shortly, can you list the books you wrote in the last 10 years?
This is my 12th. The last one was called Googled, The End of the World as We Know It. I wrote a book called Three Blind Mice. I wrote a book called The Underclass. Wrote a book called World War 3.0, Microsoft and Its Enemies. I can go on, but you don't need me to.
Good. And you also write the main features in New Yorker.
I write since, I've written for the New Yorker since 77, but since
77 you were 5 years old.
I was 6, actually.
6 years,
yeah.
okay. Can you just tell us, to get the people who don't know you acquainted, what are some of the main topics, the main stories you covered in the New Yorker?
My beat at the New Yorker is Annals of Communication, it's called. So I write about media, but that includes Google and Facebook and profiles of Murdoch and the New York Times and Sheryl Sandberg and just on and on.
What is the story which got you to the biggest trouble so far?
The biggest trouble?
Trouble.
I mean, you want me to list the people that don't speak to me?
This we don't have enough time, but just to get a gist, you know, of what your work is involved with.
Bill Gates does not speak to me because I cover the Microsoft trial and essentially began the book I wrote about that trial with the scene of him having a meltdown at the World Economic Forum. And my argument was that he behaved like a child and could have avoided. And since then, he's not behaved like a child. But I don't think the two are related, my criticism and his behavior.
Okay, Ken, let's go to your current book, Frenemies. Let's make just a little bit of spoiler, not a total spoiler, just to get the appetite of the people. Anybody read the book? Nobody read the book.
Well, the book's not out yet.
Okay. That's a very good excuse. I wanted to see who is lying, you know. In Israel, we say, if an author asks us, did you read the book? We say, I didn't read the book, I wait for the movie. Okay, so when the book is out? June 5th. But still there are some... Yes. Yeah, let's see who are the fortunate people. Can I ask who got the galleys?
Well, some of the characters that are major figures in the book, like Martin Sorrell or Carolyn Everson at Facebook and others, Les Moonves got copies of the galleys. Good. Okay. As a courtesy.
So we will give you the chance to do shameless promotion for the book.
I'm grateful.
No, we are grateful you came. Can you tell us what is the book all about?
Well, following the old Watergate adage of follow the money, if you cover the media as I do, where does the money come from? It comes from advertising. And what I set out to do is to look at this industry and whether it is in fact being disrupted. And what I discovered is that, as happened to music and newspapers and magazines and many other industries, the advertising industry is being disrupted. And it's being disrupted by what I came to call frenemies. If you're an ad agency, the disruptors are the clients who pay you the money are increasingly taking their creative and media agency stuff in-house, competing with you. The PR agencies that used to do just PR have decided they have to also be ad agencies. The platforms on which you advertise, the New York Times, Vice, BuzzFeed, et cetera, have decided that they are ad agencies as well, and they go directly to the clients. Your consulting companies, McKinsey, Deloitte, et cetera, are increasingly saying, hey, this is a good business, we got to get into it, and they're aggressively getting into it. But the biggest frenemy, I learned, and this is something that affects anyone in the media and anyone in the world, I would argue, is that the public, particularly as we move to a world of mobile phones, they don't want to be interrupted by ads on the most personal device they have. And the ads are annoying and usually uncreative. And so the public then becomes a frenemy. And if you look at, say, the statistics on ad blockers, 20% of Americans have an ad blocker. No ads get through their cell phones. In Western Europe, it's 30%. If you look at what Nielsen says the numbers are for people who have PVRs and record their programs on the PVRs, 54% skip the ads. And a generation growing up on YouTube or Netflix or HBO without ads, they don't want to be interrupted. They want to watch and binge on what they want when they want to watch. The consequence for that, to end my spiel, is that if you look at Facebook, 97% of their revenues come from advertising. Google, almost 90%. You could argue the New York Times is down to roughly 50 or 48% reliant on ads, but what happens if it went to 25%? They're doomed. So advertising becomes absolutely essential in order to keep the media ecosystem alive.
So it becoming essential to keep the media alive, but as you said, most of the money goes to Google and Facebook today, or not?
Digital money, most of it, 3/4 of it goes to those two companies, but actually most of it goes to analog platforms right now. Still.
For how long? What is your estimate of the digital part of all advertising?
I wouldn't hazard a guess on that, but it's happening fast. But the race is that many of those analog platforms are racing to become digital platforms. Look at Disney streaming or CBS streaming. They're racing to get into that world. And they're racing to get in that world because one of the things that people talk about the future is that you need targeted advertising. The more you know about a person, as Scott Galloway talked about the data being the new oil, the more you know, the more you can direct your ads at them. But that triggers another thing, which is the balancing act. The more you know about them, the more you violate their privacy potentially. And that is a huge issue, which I try and address in the book.
And what do you think is the solution, if there is any?
Well, if you go to the European Union on May 25th, they're introducing a thing where basically it says that people have to opt in order for you to have access to their cookies and their private information. One thing that unites all the frenemies in the advertising world is opposition to that. Yeah. They want people to be able to say, no, we have to opt out. But to opt out is really very complicated and bureaucratic. But that is an issue coming down the pike.
Yeah. By the way, I'm supposed to ask, not to express opinions, but I want to tell you, nevertheless, one thing about this legislation. I think this legislation will play to the hands of the big companies because you need to do so many things that I think for a small player in the digital space to follow all these rules is going to be quite a challenge.
The law of unintended consequences.
Yeah, but this is just in parentheses. You mentioned Netflix and Disney. Do you think there is a chance for somebody to shake Netflix's position in the digital space?
I think one of the reasons that Disney wants to acquire 21st Century Fox is in order to gain control of Hulu. Hulu now has 4 owners, NBC, ABC, NBC, ABC,
and another 2.
Fox is one, and Time Warner has 10%.
Yeah,
and if Disney can get 2/3, they have control. And essentially, I think one of their game plans is to try and go right after Netflix. Netflix is in a very big position. They're going to spend $8 billion on programming this year. $8 billion. By the way, CBS spends about $2 billion, which gives you an idea of the immensity of their head start.
So Disney has any chance where it will be in 5 years? Disney vis-a-vis Netflix. What do you think?
Well, you have to answer the question first. Will Disney succeed in acquiring 21st Century Fox? Comcast is coming at them.
Let's assume they will succeed.
Disney is it's hard to bet against Disney, and one of the advantages Disney has is so much of their product is welcome in, say, China, whereas the product of other companies, Facebook, Google, are not.
Let's talk about the agencies. Galloway showed that the agencies in the last, I don't know, decade lost 275,000 jobs. Where they stand vis-a-vis all the digital, automatic, programmatic, artificial intelligence, et cetera, tools.
The agencies will continue to shrink, that's clear. And one of the problems they have, if you look, LinkedIn has done a study about entry level and other job, the pay scale in agencies, and it's really below most other industries, not to mention typical industries like the duopoly of Facebook and Google. That's a huge problem because what it means is that junior copywriters are being assigned to big accounts because the procurement officers don't want the expensive copywriters because they want to reduce those costs. It becomes a terrible problem for agencies. Not only are they losing people, but they're not able or don't feel they're able to pay them enough money to get top talent.
So you think that the value of these entities will continue to shrink?
I don't know. I hate to hazard a guess on that, but if I had a bet, I would bet that, but could I be wrong? Of course. I mean, I think the idea of 5 big holding companies, which become bureaucratic and cumbersome, and don't have the kind of, like Martin Sorrell, who was a rare character who could really goose a big organization. I think it's very hard for them to be fast enough.
So what is the advice you would give them?
The advice I won't give them? Just open up your doors and let me tell more stories.
Telling that you are sorry. Let's talk a little bit about Caroline Averson because she is a character, one of the main characters in your book. Why did you single her out?
I'm not writing a book that I want 3 people to read. I'm not writing an essay. I'm writing, hopefully, a narrative and a story, and so I needed characters to tell the story. Caroline Everson is my Facebook character, and through her, I tried to use her as a vehicle to tell the Facebook story. Les Moonves, through him, I try to use to tell the story of old media trying to become new media.
She was an old media and she moved to a new media.
She had been, and she's a very successful new media person, and she's very well liked, but she represents a company that is mistrusted by many people, and that not just clients, but agencies.
So who are the friends of Facebook today? Your book is about frenemies.
Facebook and Google are major frenemies of the ad agencies, and actually sometimes the clients. The clients want more of the data that Facebook and Google have. They claim that they can't share that because it would violate the privacy of their consumers, which they violate in every other way all the time. So it's kind of, but nevertheless, there's this wall between them. Their argument is that Facebook and Google are walled gardens that are trying to prevent us from knowing more, even though we're paying for the ads. And they're at loggerheads about that. And now that Facebook is in a more vulnerable position because they're on the defensive, they'll try and cooperate a little more. But will they open up their total walled garden? Never.
Never. What is your view about fake news, Russia interfering in the US election, etc.?
You want more than a 5-second answer to that?
Yeah, give 10 seconds.
I'm against it.
This was very profound. And if you want to know the reason, go to the book. What other major interesting things you talk about in the book?
Well, I have a chapter on which I call From Madmen to Mathmen, and it goes to the previous panel before me. One of the arguments or one of the belief systems, if you're in the Facebook world or Google world, or the engineering and data scientist world, is that you can create algorithms, you can create machines that can not only displace expensive people, but can avoid the mistakes, say, of fake news, etc. And one of the things we've learned, and hopefully Facebook and the other technology companies have learned from events of recent months, is when Mark Zuckerberg says it's crazy, as he did in the fall of 2016, to believe that Russia where there was such a thing as fake news and had a big impact on the election, we learned that was wrong. And we learned it was wrong because he was reliant on those algorithms and those machines and those math men formulas that he's now come to say, oh my God, I know it's expensive, but we have to go out and hire thousands of curators who can sort out and maybe help the public sort out what is fake and what is real news.
Where will they be located? In India?
I'm sure some will be outsourced to India, and they'll probably be all over. They'll be more expensive if they're here, but some have to be here.
Will they have to understand the culture, the mentality, the heritage of the topic they are dealing with?
I would hope so, but
yeah,
I don't know so.
So they will have to be in the United States?
No, not necessarily, because you have news and platforms. I mean, most of the Facebook's customers are outside the United States.
And you don't believe that it will be done by robots with all the developments of
No,
the
I mean, actually, Mark Zuckerberg is committed to hire and is hiring thousands of what he calls curators to sort out fake and real news. So basically, it's the lesson that math men were compelled to learn, which is that maybe the madmen have a point. Maybe there's some value to wisdom and judgment that human beings have.
So you don't see that it will be robots against, good robots against bad robots, or do you?
Yeah, probably, but I don't know who the good and the bad ones are.
Yeah, I have to tell you something. I don't know. Tal Halozin is here. Tal Halozin is one of the guys who registered to the conference, and I don't know if you remember the big hit, the Guitar Hero. The Guitar Hero, where you try to play a tune which you saw the notes on the computer. It was a big hit like 10 years ago. He got it, and he played with it like 2 or 3 or 4 days, and then he had an idea. Instead of he played the Guitar Hero, he built a robot that will play the Guitar Hero on his behalf while he will be able to drink beer. So do you think we are going to have the same?
I hope so. I don't know.
Okay, so the book will be out at...
June 5.
What do you have in your mind for the next book?
I don't have a mind for the next book.
Not yet?
You're living in the present, and at some point, you'll come up for air, probably in the fall or
Who
winter.
will not talk with you after this book?
I don't know the answer to that yet. One of the things, people will always ask you, will I like your book or will I like your article after you spent enormous amounts of hours with them? And I always tell them, I never give a prediction on that, and because I tell the story. I once wrote what I thought was a positive profile of a gentleman, and at the end of it, he looked at me enraged. And I'm saying, why is this person mad? And he said, what do you mean I have thinning hair? And so I don't predict. And what happens is that people, when you profile them, their initial reaction may not be their final reaction because they're getting feedback from friends and family and readers, and in the end, they may have started out positive and then wind up negative. But for me, I'm going to another planet. I'm not going to be on that planet anymore. I'm sorry they feel that way, but goodbye, I'm gone.
So you wrote 11 books so far, right? You know what they said about Elizabeth Taylor married her 7th husband, that this is the triumph of optimism over experience. Right. This is the case in your books.
Well said. I can't top that one.
Ken Auletta, it's pity that the time is over. Thank you very much, and all of us are anxious to read your book.